Hey guys, here's a little behind the scenes video because I get a lot of questions about my schedule and how the hell I manage things and what my plan is and so on and so forth. And I want to point this out now in particular because I'm kind of making a change right now. And if people want to understand what the hell's going on behind the scenes, then this could be helpful. If you don't care and you think this is boring, don't worry. Nothing really matters. Videos are coming out every day, and if you don't want to know all the details and machinations behind the scenes, then that's totally fine. Go ahead and just click away. So, this is like a vague mock-up of where I was a few months ago, basically, in my, like, daily videos, ish. And I want to show how my old system worked and why it was kind of a problem. So here we have, there's the Patreon slot, which at the time was probably System Shock 2, actually, but would later become Horizon Zero Dawn. There's the indie slot, which is stuff like Brutal Royale, Sexy Brutale, damn it, Night in the Woods. Right now it's Outlast 2, that's the rotating slot. I specifically made an indie slot for my schedule because I got frustrated with how AAA games are so long and they kept squeezing all of the interesting little indie games I wanted to always be having in my schedule out of the schedule because I was stuck trying to finish them all the time. So that became a nice rotating slot there. And the Patreon slot has changed over time recently, for those that don't know. I got an idea from the indie slot, basically, like, isn't it nice how just, like, these things flow from one to another, and it's just, they happen when they happen? Like, recently in my indie slot, I covered, I think I was late to the game on Sexy Brutale, but I was especially late to the game on Night in the Woods. No one cared, and they did fine. People enjoyed watching those episodes, they did well, and, like, so it just... I think the good news right now is I'm getting to the point with an audience size where I can get away with not doing stuff the moment they come out necessarily, because that's a big race when you're trying to grow your audience and stuff. You're trying to be there day one for the most possible growth, and it's still the smartest thing to do to get there right there on day one, but I'm finding that it's a pain in the ass to do that as a channel that likes to finish things, so I'm shying more and more away from that kind of idea because of how much of a hassle that is. And it's both because my audience is big enough that the videos seem to do just fine, even if they are a little late to when I start. And, frankly, my Patreon following is getting bigger to the point where that's a significant amount of my income, and that's totally, like, irrespective to, or that's I don't know, irrelevant to how much I'm there on day one on a particular video, for example, although technically you could argue that the more I am there day one, the more I can grow my audience, the more I can increase my Patreon as a result, and so on and so forth. Sure, but I'm saying I can get away with leaning away from that a little bit. So as I was saying, in the vein of the indie slot, where it's just, I pick a game, it finishes, then I pick a next game, and it just loops like that, right now, my Patreon has changed to also be that way. Since its origin, we have had this monthly series, and it's always been a monthly series. And that was getting really awkward because some games like Mario, for example, are shorter, but games like Horizon Zero Dawn and Far Cry 4 can take like 2 months. Some people nominate games that haven't won yet, but some of the games that people nominate could significantly take longer than Horizon Zero Dawn to get through, and it's been really awkward trying to figure out how to manage that stuff, and it led to a problem with System Shock 2 in particular, where I got sick during the month that System Shock 2 was coming out, and it affected my output a little bit, and then it was like, nope, time to start Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm like, well, what about System Shock? And it led to a situation where System Shock 2, a game that probably should have been done that if I had not gotten sick would have been done in the month that it was nominated, because it was not a particularly long playthrough, is having its finale around the same time as Horizon Zero Dawn, which means it's essentially like a 3-month long series for a 30-episode playthrough. Like, that was never supposed to go that way. So I'm happy to say Patreon has changed that way. I put out a poll to see if people were cool with it, and 90% of people were in favor of this change, and I'm like, yes, okay, this is probably a good thing then. And that's why Horizon Zero Dawn, without any speed bumps or anything, just continued on all the way through to its finale, and ended when it ended, and that's it. Well, it hasn't ended for you guys yet, but I finished recording it. We're currently voting for the next game. Today we're nominating, and starting like tomorrow we'll be voting for the next game. So technically you can still get in on that if you want to. And I look at the way that my Patreon slot's working and the way that my indie slot's working, and I wanted to try to make the rest of my channel look like that. So first, let's run through why my current system doesn't work. So here's the games that I was playing like 2 months ago or something like that, And then here's what it looked like shortly thereafter when Nier Automata, Mass Effect 3, and Zelda came out. It quickly becomes a problem where there are like 9 games, at least, arguably even more. At this point, the Patreon slot is now Horizon Zero Dawn, and System Shock 2 is definitely its own separate thing from the Patreon slot, because it's a weird doubling up backlog thing. But also, these 3 games came out that everyone expected me to play, and yeah, sure, with good reason. And here's the issue, though, is that this is a nightmare screen. By the way, this is just kind of floating up here, the collaboration multiplayer thing. That includes podcasts, online multiplayer stuff with Wanderbot and Bird, sad games style collaboration with Joe and Andrew, that kind of stuff. That stuff just happens when it happens, and I put out videos when I have videos, and I don't put out videos when I don't have videos, so it's a nebulous thing that's external to my main schedule, and I just kind of don't count it, and so I'll just be not acknowledging that over the course of this discussion. When I talk about numbers of slots, I won't even be counting it there. It'll just happen when it happens. So, what we're looking at here is suddenly I've got way too many games here. Just way too many games going on at once. And it's not even from a perspective of like whether or not the videos will do well. It's like a perspective of like whether or not you can even record them in that time, and what kind of nightmares going on there. So my solution up until now has always been to do what I call collapsing the schedule. I probably call it that because the schedule usually looks like this tower of names, and when I collapse the schedule, I break down a couple of floors so that the 2 games share the same space, like this. And that's where you end up with a rotating time slot where Tales of Berseria and System Shock 2 are now coming out on alternating days at the same time. Lately, that has been 5 o'clock and stuff like that, like where it'd be, if Berseria came out today, then System Shock comes out tomorrow, and so on and so forth, and that's been that way for Yakuza and Nioh lately, and that's because I need to reduce the number of videos coming out per day, but still not quit any of the games I'm playing, because I don't like canceling playthroughs, like a lot of other channels would in this situation. And so that's been my solution up until now. And the reason why this is necessary, or has been necessary, is because I've been sticking with this idea of playing games the moment they come out. And it's for everyone. It helps me grow, but also it helps you guys, or it's at least not necessarily help you guys, but it's what a lot of you want, of course, because when a game's rolling around, I get so many messages about if I'm going to be playing it, and the moment I miss the release date, everyone's thinking I'm not going to play it and stuff like that. I got so many messages because I didn't play Torment: Tides of Numarina when it first came out, and it's like you see the schedule, like there's so much going on. Like right now, I'm getting contacted about which ones? Little Nightmares. People are talking about Prey coming out soon. There's a few other games coming out and have come out that come to mind. Rain World, Hollow Knight. There's a whole bunch of different games people talk about, and I just have been completely incapable of dealing with those kinds of games because I filled the schedule up so thoroughly. And now my new plan for dealing with this and for trying to stop this, because I don't want this to happen ever again. This collapsing thing, I don't want that to happen. It's a problem because, first of all, it makes those games take way longer to finish. If a game's coming out every other day, that means that it's going to take twice as long to finish. Like, games like Nioh and System Shock 2 and Tales of Berseria are not... They're not short, but they would have been gone a while ago if they had never been compromised in their scheduled output. Yakuza 0 might still be around. It's kind of a long game. But yeah, especially since I'm doing the side quests. But like by now, Nioh and Berseria would have been gone if this hadn't happened. They would have been finished already. Like they would have hit their finales. But because I insisted on starting these other games the moment they came out, then this became a mess, and that's how we get here. It's also a problem for my workflow. When I am trying to generate a backlog for a game, and I'm like, oh, I've got my little schedule, like, okay, I need a Zelda video for tomorrow. I can sit down and record 3 episodes of Zelda back to back, because those videos will come out 3 days in a row. So that means I now have a backlog of 3 days of Zelda. It's great. And it goes down by 1 every day, and then I'm like, okay, and now the clock's run out and it's time to record more Zelda. But when a game's coming out every other day, it gets really sloppy. Because if I record 2 episodes of Nioh, they're coming out 2 days apart from each other, and in between those episodes is the Yakuza 0 episode I need. So despite the fact that I sat down for an hour of a game, I still have to come back to that time slot tomorrow to record the next thing despite the time I put in, and it gets really awkward and sloppy, and it incentivizes for me to do a weird thing where I record one episode at a time of games that are in alternating time slots, because I need to immediately move on to other things. Like, for my immediate schedule, it makes more sense to record one episode of Yakuza, then one episode of Nioh in one setting, and then to do 2 episodes of Yakuza, for example, because that's what the next video is going to be after the one episode I was recording. But that's a problem because it's terrible for flow. As far as efficiency of getting episodes done, it's way easier to record 2 episodes of one game than 2 episodes of 2 different games back to back, because of the setup and switching into games and loading in and out and figuring out where you left off and all these other things. Like, it's a huge disruption to change games often, which is why I want to specifically crunch down the schedule, because if there's never this collapse where there are alternating videos, then every time I sit down to play any game, I can record multiple episodes in a row, because they're all going to come out back to back, and it all makes sense to behave that way. Which is why I'm planning on making this change. This little bounding box is trying to show the idea of that. I'm going to try to limit my daily videos to 6 main playthroughs a day. I say main playthroughs because, as said before, there's like weird floating external things like multiplayer and collaborations and podcasts, and even like maybe I'll finally get to bring back Let's Tries, for example, like weird extraneous things that come and go. That's not what I count as my main schedule, because that's not what the majority of my days are like. When I talk about my schedule, I'm talking about the time slots I'm generally working towards on my average day. So what I'm going to try to do is restrict it to 6 slots per day. As far as I can tell, that's just a nice, good number. Despite the fact, like, especially when you look at other channels and they seem busy and so forth, like 6 videos a day seems like a lot, and I get that. Like, but for me and my workflow, it's actually not too bad to average 6 or more videos per day. It really doesn't put that much strain on me, like it seems to do for other channels and whatnot. So my plan to get there is to try to uncollapse the schedule, first of all. So the first good news is that System Shock 2 and Nier Automata have been finished. So those are gone, and that leads to 2 things. One of them is that Zelda gets a chance to like slot it. Like, there's fewer slots here, kind of, but so that means that I have 1 pair of games that are still stacked on top of each other, and then 1 game is now free because its paired partner is gone, and then Zelda slips into the slot. So just like that, bam, I am now down to only 6 videos a day in this particular use of how I've defined what I mean by that, anyway, and only 1 pair of alternating games. And my plan is to stick with that. I'm going to rearrange it a little bit. Tales of Berseria was the matched pair with System Shock 2, but actually Nioh is the game that's closer to being finished, and that's the smartest thing to go with. So now, starting like tomorrow, Nioh will now be a daily video series instead of every other day, finally. And that's because Nioh is pretty close to being done, as far as I can tell. And so there'll be daily videos of Nioh until it's done, so then it will then be completed. And then finally, Tales of Berseria and Yakuza 0 will be daily videos from that point forward. We'll finally be at that point where there are no collapse games, and that's only achievable if I don't start anything new, which is why I'm not planning on starting anything new in that time. And then we wait a little bit longer, Tales of Berseria gets finished because it's also not too far from being done, and that's where new games come in. So then at that point, the time slots will be we'll have our 6 games going in parallel, which are Yakuza 0, Mass Effect, Zelda, whatever the new game is I pick at that point. And then of course there's that nebulous, confusing area that is the Patreon and Indie slot, which, as I've kind of explained before how those work. Previous Patreon game gets finished, new Patreon game starts. Previous indie game slot finishes, new indie game starts, and so on and so forth. And so I can't tell you what the new game will be, but that's when you'll see me pick a new game myself that is not specifically for the indie or Patreon slots. And I don't know where that'll be. There's actually a very real chance that it'll just be more indie games. My approach to the indie thing, and by making it have its own slot, was basically just a promise to always cover, but it's not a restriction, to be clear. It's a minimum rather than a maximum as far as indie games go. I love covering indie games. They're one of my favorite things to generally deal with, It's just that they get muscled out of the schedule because AAA games, and especially RPGs, which the channel's often focused around, are just so goddamn long. And so before long, that's just all I have time for if I pick up a few of them, and then I can't fit any indie games in. But the moment I finish Berseria, it's totally possible I just slot in another indie game there. The indie slot is just an attempt to safeguard the idea of always having a indie game on the channel to try to be a pipeline for that. But there could always be more and more and more of them. And my hope here is that with this schedule nice and clean, then these various games can just always have daily videos. They get my full attention. I can have better Let's Plays of them, hopefully, because of the fact that I can be recording like 4 episodes back to back, which makes it much easier to remember what the hell's going on and the continuity of plot points and gameplay mechanics, because I'm not like shuffling between different games so often. And so this will be my way going forward, and I'm going to test run this for a while, and I think I'm going to try to stick to it as best as I can. So if we pass by the release date of some game you really want me to play, just know that I might not be playing it specifically because I'm in the middle of stuff right now, and maybe I'll start it the moment I finish the next thing. Feel free to leave your suggestions. It's not really a voting process. Like you can't like just keep shouting the games at me and then guarantee that I'll play it or anything like that. But it is good to make me aware of games that you would like me to play, so I just have them in the back of my head. I do add things to lists and whatnot, but those lists are gargantuan. But yeah, this is the way going forward. But yeah, for context, guys, I get like 4 Steam games a day sometimes. I think I currently vary between like 1 and 4 new games getting added to my Steam account every day. And some of them are ones I want, some of them are most of them are just like the most random shit you've never heard of and will never hear of again, but at the very least I won't make the accident of buying in a Steam sale when I already have it, so I might as well redeem them as we go. But yeah, there's a deluge of video games. Even when you're somebody who plays this many and has this many slots open per day, whereas most channels have like 1 or 2 total, basically. Even when I do this many games at once, they come out too fast. There's so many of them. So we'll see how it goes from here. We'll see which games I pick from here forth. I'm going to try to be very careful about what I pick. I'm going to try to make my choices count if I can, because I am now restricting myself to a certain number of slots, and I want to play games that you want to watch, and I want to play and have this be a mutually great thing. But I also am trying to be carefully in control. I might fudge the boundaries a little bit, like if a game is about to finish and it's got a few episodes left, but I already finished recording them, and some games coming out that day, I might just start that game that day, and there'd be like a few days of overlap where we flex the schedule slightly, but that'll be very careful and controlled. And I'm not just doing this for a video output perspective and a recording not just for like comfortable recording schedule, and not just for being able to keep track of what's going on, and not just for like capping the video output in general for you guys and stuff like that. Like, it's also an additional thing is that I need a backlog. I need a backlog like desperately. So I have been doing this full time now for about a year, and this entire year I've been like, surely, for the love of God, I will totally be able to fix my goddamn schedule, right? Like, surely I will finally have a backlog. I'm not working another job at the same time. But the problem is, whenever I have more time, I just use that more time. So doing this restraint on how my schedule works should be super useful for consistency, just across the board, and sanity, basically. I want to get to a nice comfortable spot where the videos that you guys are watching are videos that I recorded like probably 3 days ago on average, just because that little buffer is super useful. It means that if I have a freak collaboration session or whatever where I go to Andrew's midway through the day and we're just there all day, and I stay late or whatever, or I get invited to a wedding, or we go on a family thing for the weekend, or podcast scheduling and so on and so forth gets all over the place. Like, when that kind of stuff happens right now, it's often devastating for my backlog, where like on a regular basis, I'm immediately behind again. The moment I think I'm ahead, go right back to being behind. And I'm often recording videos the day they come out. Not all of them, but like some of them. There's always like a few that didn't quite make it. I'm like, okay, I gotta get these 2 videos out of the day for today so I can start recording for tomorrow. And that's a terrible system. So this is my solution. We'll see how it goes. Nothing's set in stone, just like how when we made the changes to Patreon, nothing's set in stone. But I think these are good changes, and I think they'll help. And if you were one of the people looking for a chance to be informed about this kind of stuff, then hopefully this hopefully went forward to some extent to like help explain what the hell's going on with some of the stuff and why things happen, when they happen, in what order they happen, and so on. And hopefully this will work out and be great. So this is very much only possible really because of my Patreon. This idea of being less aggressive about channel growth and less aggressive about hitting deadlines and stuff like that, and just doing something that's smoother as opposed to chasing after every single thing that starts when it starts. Because that's the terrifying thing before. That's why the schedule was so chaotic, is that it's like, what's the current schedule? Too bad, Zelda's out, now it's on the schedule. Like that was a nightmare. Like every time a game comes out that just gets plonked on top. And I think backing away from that helps everyone, more or less. But that's only really possible because of my Patreon, because of the fact that like half my income comes from an external source that is independent of my daily views and stuff like that. So if you like the fact that this works this way, and you want to contribute to that, then feel free to check out my Patreon. It's just a voluntary subscription service. You can start and stop whenever you want, and that affects it is my income, more or less. And it's how you support what I do. It's the tip jar, basically. And $1 a month is totally valid. You can do exactly as much as you want. And that is how the Patreon slot works, as listed there. People that do $15 a month or more are the ones that get to nominate. If you want to get in for this nomination, it is too late now to do that right now. We've already doing nominations. Tomorrow is when we're probably going to start voting. So you have to get in pretty quick to even get into voting for this particular game, because Horizon Zero Dawn is wrapping up and I'm choosing the next one. So people that do $15 a month, they nominate, which means they literally just type in the name of a game, and that's their nomination. And then 2 days later, we do a voting process where everybody, including everyone who donates $1 a month and above, just period, all of my Patreon people, all get to vote on the list that the $15 people generated. So I don't generate the nominations, and I don't vote in the poll. I just get whatever comes out, and it's been a really interesting experience, and that's my sort of incentive and reward that I give to people who choose to support me on Patreon. Is basically that's the viewer's choice slot, because of course people always want to have a chance to sort of have a viewer choice thing on the channel, and I need to eat, so I've made those two solve each other basically. So I also have a Twitter, there's a Discord server, you can check those things out if you want to. Discord is just a chat room we all hang out in. I'm there, Andrew's there a lot. Various members of the community are there all the time. Those are all options. Thanks for watching like always, guys. Hope this informed you about things going on and what's going on in my head and what my plan is for stuff going forward and why I might be passing over various games and so on and so forth. And I'll see you guys next time.